Hi, so working through example set B, let angle A be an acute angle in a right triangle. Find the measurement of angle A and round the nearest tenth of a degree. So here, for example, it gives us sine of A is equal to 0.36. So to find out what A is, in this case we want to use inverse sine. So if I use inverse sine, remember we get that by doing second and then inverse sine. 0.36, and then it'll give me, in this case, the measure of angle A is equal to 21.1 degrees. And we're going to follow that for these others as well. So inverse tangent of 0.8. So the measure of angle A in this example is 38.7 degrees. So for this next one, we're going to do inverse sine of 0.27, and that gives me the measure of angle A is equal to 15.7 degrees. And then for cosine of A equals 0.35, then we do inverse cosine of 0.35. And that gives me the measure of angle A is equal to 69.5 degrees. What I'd like for you to do is go ahead and try the next set on your own, pause the video, and then see if you agree. Hopefully you had a chance to pause the video. So we are going to do inverse tangent of 0.42. And that gives us measure of angle A equals 22.8 degrees. Inverse cosine 0.11 will give us the measure of angle A for number 6 equals 83.7 degrees. Then for this one, inverse sine 0.94. 0.94. So the measure of angle A is equal to 70.1 degrees. And then number 8, inverse cosine of 0.77. So the measure of angle A is 39.6 degrees. If I flip over to the back, example C. So for this one, we're going to use the diagram to find the indicated measurement and then round our answer to the nearest tenth. So for this one, I'm just going to adjust my camera. There we go. So for this one, it first asks what's the length of m to n, and because it's a right triangle, we can use the Pythagorean Theorem. So c squared equals a squared plus b squared. C squared is what we're trying to find out. A squared, I'll use 15 for a, so 15 squared plus 7 squared. So then we've got, we need to figure out what 15 squared is. 15 squared is 225. 7 squared is 49. Yeah, I forgot what 15 squared was. And then add those together. We get c squared equals 274. Done to do the square. Take the square root on both sides. This is distance, so it's got to be positive. And that's not a perfect square, so we're going to round. So I'm going to take the square root of 274. So that gives me about, round to the nearest tenth, so 16.6. So the length here, and the length of mn, 16.6. About. Okay. To find the measure of angle M, so that's this angle measurement here. So to find this one, I'm going to use the sides that I have non-rounded measurements for. So in this case, I'm going to use this side here, which is adjacent to M, and this side here, which is opposite. So doing that, adjacent and opposite, the trigonometric function that works with that is going to be tangent. So we need to find tangent first. So I need to find tangent of let's see, opposite over adjacent, so tangent of n is equal to 15 over 7. So that'll give me about about 2.1429. So if I do the inverse tangent of, and I do either of these because by rounding to 4 decimal places, it ensures that we're good either way. But I'm going to go ahead and do 15 divided by 7. And so then what will happen is this will give me the measure of angle n. So inverse tangent of 15 over 7s is equal to, approximately equal to, and then that gives me about 65.0 degrees. And so that gave me this angle measurement here. So I know that this is 65, about 65.0 degrees. Now to find the missing measurement value, you could do trig again, or we know that the triangle is 180 degrees, so if we subtract off the 90 degrees, and we also subtract off what we found, then we're left with what the measure of angle n is. So 180 minus 90 is 90. Oh, I don't know why I put 5. I'm sorry. Measure of angle n. Measure of angle n. There we go. And then 90 minus 65 is 25. So the measure of angle n is equal to 25 degrees. There's that one there. Example D. Solve the right triangle. Round the decimal answers to the nearest tenth. So here we're going to find everything that's missing. Everything that's missing. So first we need to figure out, well, what's missing. So on this one, we're missing the measure of angle P. We're missing side from P to Q, and the side from Q to R. I picked the measure of angle P first because that's the only missing angle measurement that we need to find. And we can get that by taking 180 minus the 90. So that's how many degrees are left between these two. And that's always the case, by the way, when we do that. And so the measure of angle P is 53 degrees. Now to get the measure of PQ, this is where we need to look at P to Q. So if I look at, this is, let's just use the information that they gave us. It's always better to use the information that they gave us just in case. So I'm going to use this as my reference angle. So using R as a reference angle. So if I use R as a reference angle, then what happens is I get PQ. So this, in this case, if I do, let's see, I need P to Q is this side. This is going to be opposite. This is adjacent. So if I want to use this as a reference angle, I have an opposite, because I need to know what the opposite value is, and I have hypotenuse. So the trig function that relates opposite and hypotenuse is going to be sine. So if I do sine of 37 degrees, that is equal to what I want to find out. So in this case, we use that as x. So x over hypotenuse, which is 22. Multiply both sides by 22. So if I take 22 times sine of 37 degrees, that gives me about 13.2. And that's what x is. 13.2. So PQ is 13.2. Q to R. So let's see, we have adjacent and hypotenuse. So we're going to do, in this case, we're going to use cosine. So cosine of 37 degrees is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. Again, multiplied by 22 on both sides to cancel it out here. And we have 22 times cosine of 37. Oh, and I did inverse cosine. There we go. There we go. And then that gives me 17.6. X is approximately equal to 17.6 in this case. So the length of Q to R is 17.6. And that gives us our missing values. So now we have all of the sides and all of the angles. For 13, this one we're given two sides to start out, so we need to find the length of the third side. So to find the length of the third side, so this is what's going to be P to N, we're going to find the length of the third side. We're going to do A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So I'm going to actually use some of the space up here, plus B squared. So I'm trying to find C squared, do 11 squared plus 18 squared. 11 squared is 121. I always forget what 18 squared is, 324. If I add those together, I get C squared equals 445. If I take the square root of both of those, square root of C squared, square root of 445, so I get C is approximately equal to 21.1 after rounding. So the length of PN is approximately 21.1 after rounding. Now the other one that I want to find is I need to find the measure of angle P. I need to find the measure of angle N. So the measure of angle P here, measure of angle N here. So to find the measure of angle P, I'm looking at the values that I have that it's given. So for P, I have opposite and adjacent. So that leads me to wanting to use tangent. So if I use tangent of P, that's going to be 18 over 11. So then I'm going to take the inverse tangent of 18 divided by 11. So inverse tangent of 18 divided by 11. And so that gives me about 58.6 degrees. So the measure of angle P is about 58.6 degrees. And then similarly with N, so now if I use this as my reference angle, and here opposite is 11, adjacent's 18, so be careful now that I'm going here instead. So tangent of N is equal to, now I have 11 over 18, so if I take inverse tangent of 11 over 18, inverse tangent of 11 divided by 18, that gives me approximately 31.4 degrees. Now, I did this the longer way on this one instead of just subtracting it off to show that as long as I rounded right, these should add up to 90, and they do. So you could have done it the way that I showed you earlier, where you just subtract off, like we did up here with the measure of angle N on this number 11, or on this number 13. You could also do it that way as well. It doesn't matter which one. I switched to a different color so you can see it a little bit differently. Hopefully it shows up in the video. Do a couple more for you in our next video. Thanks!